Hello and welcome. It's Tuesday, the 29th of April. You're tuned in to our 10 a.m. newscast here on Arirang TV. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. 5 more bodies were recovered from the Sewol-ho ferry overnight amid difficult weather conditions. 193 people are now confirmed dead. 109 others remain unaccounted for but presumed dead. Amid rising concerns, North Korea could soon conduct a 4th nuclear test. The leaders of South Korea and China are likely to meet for talks in the coming weeks. Plus, the US imposes sanctions on 7 Russian nationals and more than 12 firms linked to President Putin's inner circle over their role in the Ukraine crisis. The entire nation has been grieving for the victims of the Sewol-ho ferry disaster for days now. And on this Tuesday, a much larger memorial altar opens at a park in Ansan, the city so awfully touched by this tragedy. Rain continues to fall across the country, but that hasn't stopped tens of thousands of people paying tribute to those who died. We connect live to our Ji Myung-kil, who's standing by at the Ansan Hwarang Memorial Hall. Myung-gil.
Good morning, Mark. This new Memorial Hall opened earlier this morning, and people have been streaming in to say their last goodbyes. Just an hour ago, President Park Geun-hye visited the new altar and paid tribute to the victims of the Sewol-ho ferry. She also took time to meet with the families of the victims. As you mentioned, the altar has been relocated to this park in Ansan as the number of mourners has grown and grown in recent days. The ANSAN HWARANG Memorial Hall is 6 times larger than the previous altar, which was at the Ansan Olympic Memorial Hall. The altar displays portraits of the victims, including 152 students and 4 teachers from Ansan's Tanon High School. Over the past 6 days, some 180,000 people have visited the altars set up in this city.
And Myung-gil, it seems as though the city has been overwhelmed by the sheer number of people wanting to say their last goodbyes. How will this new altar be run, and can anyone go down and pay their respects?
Yes, they can, Mark. The new memorial altar will be run 24 hours a day, and people can come in here and pay tribute to those who lost their lives so tragically. The new memorial hall will be run by the government and is jointly sponsored by the Ansan City and Gyeonggi-do Province. To handle the volume of people coming here, more than 30 shuttle buses will be laid on to help people to get to and from nearby subway stations. There's also a huge parking lot with room for nearly 3,000 cars right next to the altar. People who can't make it here can instead send text messages or personal letters commemorating the victims. The messages are posted up on a bulletin board so they can be read by mourners paying their respect here. This was Ji Myung-kil reporting from Ansan Hwarang Memorial Altar.
Now, the country is still in a deep state of shock and sorrow about the ferry disaster, with 193 people now confirmed dead and 109 others unaccounted for and presumed dead. Now, let's connect live to our Shin Se-min at the news centre. So, Se-min, the weather hasn't been on the search and rescue team's side in the recent days. How has this affected operations?
Good morning, Mark. The conditions down there in Chindo have definitely made things extremely difficult. Heavy rain, high tides, fast currents, and fog were troubling factors hampering the rescue operation. Now, currently, the official death toll stands at 193, with 4 more bodies discovered during an early morning rescue operation at around 2 a.m. Korea time. The bodies have not yet been identified, but are presumed to be male students from Tanon High School. Now, going back to the conditions down at the site, rain clouds are expected to clear over the course of this morning, which should help search efforts, but sea conditions will get tougher with currents forecast to reach speeds of up to 2.4 meters per second. And in terms of search operation, a diving bell is expected to be put in on Tuesday afternoon, and this will allow divers to continue their underwater search for up to 20 consecutive hours. And so far, only 1/3 1/3 of 111 cabins have been searched. The divers are mainly focused on searching the 4th floor of the ferry, where most of the missing passengers are believed to be and where they also found some of the bodies over the last several hours.
Well, Semin, let's hope the conditions improve enough for them to recover more of the bodies, just for the sake of their poor families who've been waiting for so long now. And Semin, new video footage of the early stages of the sinking has been released, and it makes for really rather shocking viewing.
Yes, it really does. The video released by Maritime Police shows the first crucial moments of how rescue efforts were carried out, and it shows a captain and some of the crew being among the first to get off the sinking ferry. Now, the central focus of the footage is a period between 9:43 a.m. and 9:49 a.m. This footage clearly shows Captain Lee Jun-seok and his crew member leaving the ferry without attending to passengers. And it's difficult to distinguish him as a captain as Lee jumps into the rescue boat on his boxer shorts without his uniform on. And by 9:35 a.m., all 15 crew members have started to abandon their ship. But as you can see, hardly any passengers are seen on the deck of the ferry, raising criticism the crew didn't properly instruct them to leave the ship.
Yes, no passengers, apparently, just looking at the video there. And of course, there's still more questions than answers at this point, unfortunately. But what about the criminal investigation that's ongoing at the moment? What do we know so far?
Yes, there are a number of investigations underway, and among those is a link between Kim Han-sik, the president of the Cheongjin Marine Company, and Yoo Byung-hun, the practical owner of the ferry company. Kim was summoned for investigation Tuesday morning for the first time since the ferry disasters. Now, prosecutors are looking into whether Kim was involved in any business irregularities, such as embezzlement, dereliction of duty, and tax evasion in connection with Yoo. The possibility that Kim managed slush funds for Yoo Byung-hun is also being investigated. Now, investigators have been also looking into Yoo Byung-hun and have raided 4 offices in Seoul, Daegu, and Gyeonggi-do province on Monday, looking for evidence of paper companies. They also raided the Mokpo Coast Guard station, suspecting officers there of neglected their duties in the early stages of the rescue. And also 3 members of the Korea Shipping Association have been arrested for destroying evidence in relation to the case. Now, investigations into whether the ferry had malfunctioning lifeboats on board will also broaden, as 5 lifeboats were found floating near the scene, indicating they began to work much later than they should have. And normally, a well-functioning lifeboat would automatically deploy upon coming under external pressure. And that's all I have for now, but I will keep you updated throughout the day.
Thank you very much, Semin. Now, with a tragedy of this magnitude, experts say that residents across Ansan, the city most touched by this disaster, are suffering from mental strain. And it's not just the families and friends of the victims. To deal with this crisis, officials say a trauma centre will be set up in the city. Psychiatrists, therapists and counsellors will be on standby to provide citizens with mental health care. There are concerns local residents could suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, given the horrific nature of this disaster and the number of people it has affected. And Japanese leaders have expressed their condolences to the victims of the Sewol-ho ferry disaster. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida, and Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga visited a memorial altar set up at the headquarters of the Korea Residents Union in Tokyo on Monday to pay their respects to the deceased and the missing. Kishida said Japan will do all it can to help Korea in its time of need. The altar opened to the public last Friday with a memorial service attended by many Korean nationals living in the country.
Said that a team of South Korean...
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. Arirang News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers 15 billion. South Korea is looking to hold a summit with China in the coming weeks. Amid rising concerns, North Korea is on standby to conduct a 4th nuclear test. Government sources in Seoul say there are ongoing talks to get a meeting arranged soon, with some saying Chinese President Xi Jinping could visit Seoul as early as May next month. An official announcement on the meeting could come soon. The envisioned talks are part of the two countries' efforts to curb North Korea's nuclear ambitions and prevent further provocations. North Korean human rights activist Susan Schulte has called on South Korean politicians to speak with one voice on improving human rights conditions in North Korea. Na Hyung-kyung has this report.
South Korean politicians who refuse to pass a North Korea Human Rights Act are like the captain of the sunken Sewol-ho ferry, says North Korea human rights activist Susan Schulte.
Those people remind me of the captain of the Sewol ferry because this man turned away from people whose lives were in terrible danger and hid his face. And this is what people are doing that won't address the North Korean human rights issues. They're hiding their faces and ignoring the political prisoner camps, the starvation, the crimes against humanity, the fact that women are being bought and sold and trafficked in China. North Korean women, it's happening today.
Schulte says even if North Korea's human rights violation cases are referred to the International Criminal Court, as suggested by the UN Commission of Inquiry after publishing a report last month, it will have limited effects.
And that's because China and Russia will obviously block progress because they don't believe, as members of the Security Council, that the Security Council has the right to be involved and address human rights issues.
And that's why South Korea's role is crucial. She says an average North Korean no longer believes what they're being told by the regime is true. The people in North Korea have access to the outside world, and the outside world can and should utilize this.
I believe that most people that are in that dictatorship are really questioning whether blindly following Kim Jong-un is the way forward. So my point is, you start to say that not only do we know who are committing these crimes, but we know that it's you that's been involved with this. We start naming the names. We make it costly for them to continue to blindly follow this regime. And we need to be broadcasting that information in, because the North Korean people, I believe, are starting to learn the truth and to realize that the source of their misery, the source of their suffering is the Kim regime. Not South Korea, not the United States, not people from the outside world. It's the regime that's causing the terrible suffering.
Na Hyung-kyung, Arirang News.
Now, as the whole country remains in a deep state of sorrow over the Sewol-ho ferry disaster, many Koreans are spending less and refraining from leisure activities. Our Hwang Ji-ae reports on how this may cloud the ongoing economic recovery.
Around 250 events and cultural festivals were cancelled across the nation after the Sewol-ho ferry submerged in waters off the southern coast of Korea last Wednesday. Tourism companies are also facing major cancellations as the Education Ministry banned all school trips in the first half of this year, while the whole nation is grieving with the families of the victims. Retail shops are also taking a hit. Sales at one of the country's main department stores, Lotte, dropped nearly 1% in the week following the ferry accident compared to the same period a year earlier. Sales of women's clothing in particular dropped more than 4% from the previous year, pointing to a social phenomenon that many of those suffering from depression after the disaster are females. In fact, the shock of a large-scale disaster has shown to impact the economy. After the September 11th terror attacks in the United States, retail sales in September dropped nearly 2.5% on month, falling to its lowest level in 9 years. Korea's private spending also dropped 0.8 percentage points in the third quarter of 1995, right after the Sampoong department store collapsed in June of that year. While the consumer sentiment remained unchanged for 3 straight months in April, according to the Bank of Korea, experts are concerned that the recent ferry disaster could flag the moderate pace of economic recovery. Hwang Ji-ae, Arirang News.
Chinese tourists are expected to come pouring into Korea this week as their annual Labor Day holiday season begins this Thursday. The nation's retailers have already devised their marketing strategies to get the big spenders to part with some of their holiday cash. Yulian reports.
China's three-day Labor Day holiday season begins this Thursday, and shopping malls in Korea are vamping up their marketing strategies to entice more Chinese tourists in. Malls are preparing various events, including a diamond giveaway event and big discounts on brands popular with Chinese consumers. One of Korea's biggest retailers, Lotte Mall, will open a Korean Wave pop-up store especially for the holiday that will sell products related to popular Korean dramas. These efforts should come as no surprise as Chinese tourists have surpassed Japanese tourists, both in terms of their numbers and the amount they spend in Korea. Japanese tourists traditionally top the list when it comes to foreigners visiting Korea, but the number contracted recently due to the weak yen and strong Korean won, while Chinese tourists have been coming here in their droves. More than 1 million Chinese tourists came to Korea in the first 3 months of the year, up nearly 45% from the same period last year. One mall saw sales to Chinese consumers spike a whopping 107% in the first quarter of this year, and the country's biggest duty-free shop, Lotte Duty Free, saw its sales to Chinese visitors hit a record high of over $850 million. That's up 15% from the first quarter of last year. Yurian, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through our international headlines, and for that we connect live to our Eunice Kim standing by at the news center. Good morning, Eunice.
Hello to you, Mark. New sanctions are being queued up for friends of Russian President Vladimir Putin, both from the U.S. and the European Union. The White House said Monday it has expanded asset freezes and visa bans to 7 Russian government officials, including 2 members of President Putin's inner circle, as well as 17 companies linked to that inner circle. U.S. President Barack Obama said they were targeted sanctions in response to Moscow's continued intervention in Ukraine, despite an agreement in Geneva among foreign ministers earlier this month. The European Union has added 15 more Russian officials to its sanctions list without immediately releasing their names. Meanwhile, Slovakia has agreed to allow cash-strapped Ukraine to use its pipeline to move gas from Western Europe, this as Kiev seeks to lessen its dependence on Russian supplies. Americans in parts of southern and midwestern USA are bracing for a new round of storms as severe weather and tornadoes swept through Iowa, Oklahoma, and Arkansas on Sunday local time. The total death toll now stands at least 16, with 2 additional fatalities being registered out of Mississippi. On Sunday, much of the damage was in 2 Faulkner County towns in Arkansas, where witnesses reported flipped cars, broken gas lines, shattered homes, and mountains of debris. Rescue workers and volunteers sift through the rubble as the storm system is threatening its second round through parts of Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Tennessee. And in Leeds, England, a 61-year-old Spanish teacher has been stabbed to death in front of her students. The attack took place Monday morning local time at Corpus Christi Catholic College, where a 15-year-old student was arrested in connection to the case. West Yorkshire police said the teacher received multiple stab wounds and was pronounced dead at the hospital. They called it an unprecedented event that will prove to be a very traumatic situation for all of those involved. And peace talks are to resume in South Sudan Monday between its government and rebel forces. The talks will take place in the Ethiopian capital of Addis Ababa, and as the United Nations top human rights official Navi Pillay visits the country as part of a 2-day investigation of the situation on the ground. The talks resume amid optimism, though some are reported to be jaded with the peace process due to a lack of progress. The country has been bogged down by ethnic violence and war crimes, including massacres and rape.
And good morning to you all as we kick things off in the LPGA. And just moments after Do Seung-yeol was able to claim his first PGA title during the Zurich Classic, 17-year-old Lydia Ko was able to win her first title as a pro at the LPGA Swinging Skirts Classic. The 17-year-old Korean New Zealander, who gained her LPGA Tour membership starting the season despite her age, stormed through in the third and fourth round of the event as she came back to claim her first pro title after shooting a 12 under par overall. The score was just good enough to beat American Stacey Lewis, who finished second at 11 under par, while world number one Park Geun-hye still looks for her first title of the season after finishing tied for fourth at 6 under par. And shifting over to the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, where the International Olympic Committee's organizing committee will be in the resort town for 4 days to check up on the current status of the venue. In what is their third meeting so far, the meeting will have some of the presidents of different winter sports federations come together to check out the current status of the venue in Pyeongchang. They plan to take a look at how the constructions are being done and where the Olympic Village will be built. Meanwhile, Tavio Singh-Kwanta, the president of the International Skating Union, who will also be on hand, apparently refused to answer questions regarding the controversial judging during the figure skating event during the 2014 Sochi Winter Games. And shifting over to Kim Yeon-ah, who had previously canceled her retirement commemoration medal event amid the Sewol-ho ferry accident, held the event on Monday. Now, wearing a black dress and a yellow ribbon to show respect to those affected by the tragic accident, the figure queen made a quiet entrance to showcase the limited edition medals that are now on sale to commemorate her retirement from the sport. And while she previously planned to donate the proceeds to the youth figure skating in the nation, she stated that she decided to donate the proceeds to the victims of the Sewol-ho ferry accident. And now finishing things off in the majors, where Ryu Yeon-jin took the mound against the Colorado Rockies on Sunday to get his fourth win of the season and the Dodgers' 10,000th win in team history. Well, none of that actually happened, as the Rockies lineup took advantage of Ryu Yeon-jin's 4-day rest, tagging him for 6 runs on 5 innings of pitching, as the South Korean southpaw got his second loss of the season. And with the loss, the LA Dodgers, who were looking for their team's 10,000th victory, stayed at 9,999 wins. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
I'm Ji Myung-kil here with your latest weather update in Jindo and around the country. Well, spring tides starts from today, and spring tides indicates when the tides range is at its maximum. So things should be very difficult for divers over at the site, and morning rain in Jindo should gradually let up heading towards the afternoon. And the the rest of the country should have another rainy and cloudy day today, and this band of rain will start to gradually clear out from the western part of the peninsula from the late afternoon. Now, with this continuous rain, temperatures have been remaining on a cool side below 20 degrees Celsius, and it seems like temperatures should be similar to yesterday, so please dress accordingly. And let's take a closer look at the readings for today. Well, most of the rain has let up here in Seoul, and the high in the capital, Daegu, Gwangju, and Busan will all top out at 18 this afternoon. Now, for other regions, it looks like Jeju will reach to 19, Daejeon peaks at 18, and Dokdo should top out at 13, while Mount Kumgang should see a high of 8. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's the global forecast for viewers around the world.
And that's all for now. We'll be back at noon Korea time. In the meantime, you can always catch up with what's been happening on our website, arirang.co.kr/news.